Hello and welcome to OutSystems. OutSystems is an enterprise-grade application development platform that allows you to build applications very quickly using a visual design paradigm. Today we'll discuss how the platform allows you to build full-stack applications that integrate and extend with just about anything you like, and we have full lifecycle capabilities, including DevOps and deployment capabilities out of the box, where you can create terrific customer experiences and user experiences using our visual development tools. Let's get started. All right, so today we're going to create a brand new application using OutSystems. Here we are in Service Studio. You can see some of the existing apps and modules. I'm going to go ahead and create an app from scratch, but we can choose existing applications. Once we choose from scratch, we have a number of options. We can create reactive web apps or mobile and tablet apps. Again, there's also templates that we can use to create applications. When I go in to create the application's basic information, you notice we have the option to choose some colors for the theme of the application. If I upload an icon, notice that OutSystems will pick up the colors of that icon. So if your company needs to use a specific set of colors, you can use your icons and we'll pick up the colors for you. When you create a module, you have some different options. You can create service modules or library modules. In this case, we're just going to create a reactive web module. Now, when you get into Service Studio and you're creating the app, the first thing you'll notice is there are a number of different tabs and different panes. On the left-hand side, we have the toolbox, which is context sensitive. In the middle, there's the canvas. At the bottom, we have the output window where we have the output from your one-click publish, which is when your application is compiled and deployed. And we also have full debugging capabilities, so you can ensure that your applications are running as expected. And you can debug just like in a high-code environment. On the right-hand side, we have business process tabs, interface tabs. We have the logic tab where you put your code, and then we have the data tab. One cool feature of OutSystems is that you can import a data structure from an Excel spreadsheet. You'll notice that the expense and card entities are pulled from the spreadsheet. These are the tabs at the bottom of the spreadsheet, and the columns in the spreadsheet will create the different attributes of those entities. So one of the great features of OutSystems as well is the ability to use your data to scaffold screens. So all I have to do is drag, for example, the card and the expense data into the canvas and just drop them there, and you'll notice what it does. It not only creates a screen for your card and expenses, but it also creates a detail screen. So the cards and the expense tabs are going to be, or the expense screens are going to be list screens, whereas the details will go into detail on those things. You'll also notice that we scaffold the CRUD operations for you. So create, read, update, and delete operations are automatically built out for you. I can just simply double click on the canvas to show one of these screens, and here you have the card list screen. Now, one of the things I'm going to do here is edit into the card detail screen, and I'm going to change the way this displays information. So first thing I'll do is I'll delete this image here because I don't want a single image to show up, but I want to have the option to display different images based on the context of the situation. So I'm going to drag an if conditional, and I'm going to create a condition that will be evaluated every time the screen shows up. You'll notice we have a bunch of out-of-the-box functions to help you with your coding. I'm going to use toLower just to take the text from the current item in my card list. So I'm going to scroll through these and I'm going to select the card type and throw it into this function, and I'm going to convert the card type to lower, and then I'm going to compare that to the word Visa in lowercase. So what I'm doing here is evaluating whether the credit card type is a Visa or a MasterCard in this scenario. In this case, all I need to do is drag and drop an image into the true and into the false conditions for this conditional that I put on the screen, and then it'll evaluate and display the appropriate image. Now, I can show you as well that the one-click publish button now has an error. The cool thing about that is that it'll give you the actual location of where the error occurs. In this case, I'm going to go ahead and select a local image, but here you'll notice when I click the errors, it'll tell you exactly. If you double click, it'll take you to the exact location, so it makes debugging and fixing problems very easy. Now I am going to use a local image. Again, you can see before that I could have done external URLs or binary images. And in this case, I'm just going to select a Visa image for the true condition, and I'm going to select a MasterCard image for the false condition. Again, you can do multiple types of conditions. This can be more complex than just simply choosing two, but you'll notice that now we have the module is valid, and it'll display depending on what type of credit card we have. Now, for the detail screen, I want to know what expenses are associated with this credit card. And as you can see, as I'm dragging the expense data entity over, I'm looking for the right place to put it. You'll see these blue highlights appear. I can drop this underneath a specific section, or I can drop it next to different sections. And sometimes this can be a little finicky, so you have to be a little patient. But what I'm really trying to do is find the edge of the container that contains both of these items, the card information and the image widgets. And so as soon as I get down to there, we'll see a heavy blue line appear at the very bottom of both of those. Now again, this sometimes can be very finicky, and in a minute I'll show you as well how you can use various tools in the Service Studio environment to determine where you are in the hierarchy of objects on your screen. Now you see I have a hard black line at the very bottom, so I'm going to drop my entity there, and then I have the option to add or subtract columns from that entity. I just really want to show the company name and the date and the amount of the expense. Now you'll notice that this table shows at the bottom here, and it's got data in it from our entity. I'm going to just do a top 10 expenses, so I'm going to go ahead and delete the pagination. There's pagination that's automatically brought into the application when you drop a table in there if it's necessary, and I'll also delete the on-pagination method, which also, again, you'll see the output windows giving us a warning that this particular method is no longer used. Feel free to delete it. Now, once I have this set up, I can customize this a little bit. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to change the maximum records to 10 here, just so I only display 10 items on the aggregate. And what I did here was when I dragged the expense table or entity onto the screen, I created what's called an aggregate, and you'll notice that OutSystems called the aggregate get expenses, so it's smart enough to know contextually what's happening. I also have the ability to preview data, and so as you can see from the message, to preview data, I need to press the publish button to publish the application. So as this is publishing, I'm going to compile and deploy everything. Again, you see the output window giving us the information about how this is being deployed. And once it's done, the icon will turn blue at the top, so you can open your application in a browser to check it out. In this case, I just want to hit the red Get Data button because I want to refresh the data in my entity here. So I click Get Data, and now it'll refresh and it'll prepare your data and it'll display it for us. Now here's the data again that I just uploaded from my spreadsheet. This lives in a SQL server on our servers in AWS. Now I can use an aggregate as basically a visual type of query, and what I wanted to do is just sort in descending order by amount so that when I display the credit card information and the expense details, it will be in descending order by amount. I can also change the styling of this. I can, for example, I want to have, since there's 3 columns, I'm going to set the first 2 columns at 35% of the width each, and then the final column I'll set at 30%. There's a number of different ways. You can do it by percentage, by number of pixels, as you can see there. I'm just going to go ahead and do percentages because I want the company and the date to be a little bit larger. And then I can also delete columns. I can move columns around. So there's some tools up here to control the columns. You can add columns as you're working, as I was showing up here. And we can also center the items in the header, or we can change the alignment of the items in there very easily by clicking on the styles. Okay, so now what I'm going to do next is I want to display an icon of the company logo next to the word of the company name. So here you can see I have Walmart. I dragged an image into the table, and notice it'll reproduce it for every row. I'm going to go ahead and resize this to make it smaller to be 2 columns wide. And again, we have the ability to select an image. Now, previously I selected and imported a local image from my computer, but in this case, I'm going to use an external URL. And the external URL was part of the entity that we imported. So the expense entity has a column which has the URLs for the various logos for our companies. And I can grab that just by getting this from get expenses aggregate. I can get the image URL and just use that as the source for my image. And there you go. Now you see I have the Walmart icon right next to Walmart, the name of the company. And one other thing I want to do now OutSystems has full role-based access control, but in this demo, I'm just going to set all the screens to anonymous just to make it easier. But you can create specific roles where you can grant and prevent access. It's full authentication and authorization. We also integrate with Okta, Azure ID, and other IDP providers for SAML 2.0 or OpenID. And notice here as well that I can select the different events and items here. One of the things I want to do is in the hierarchy, I'm going to select the link to move this, and I'm going to do transitions. So it makes a nice visual when you have a transition from left to right to go from the card list to the card detail screen. And you can go back and have a right to left swipe from the card detail screen. And here you can see, again, I mentioned earlier that there is a way to view the hierarchy of the objects on your screens. You can see that on the screen itself, you can get those objects. And at the bottom here, I have a little breadcrumbs trail that as I highlight those items, it highlights them on the screen. And on the far right in the interface tab, there's also a widget tree that has, again, as I highlight over these things, you can see they're selected. So OutSystems makes it very easy to find your way around the screens as you're developing them. Because you're using templates, you're going to have to put objects into locations that they can be put, for example, containers. And you want to make sure that you know exactly where things are laid out correctly in your application. Now I'm going to go ahead and do another publish here, and we'll just see if there's any issues with the publish. You'll notice that I'm successfully deploying, and now I can open it in the browser. And here's what we've created so far. So now I have a card list, and I click that. It swipes from the left. You can see I have the top 10 expenses here sorted in descending order by the amount. And then when I hit the back button here, we will go right back to the card list detail. We can also add a new card, and we can fill in details here. So again, all the CRUD operations are there. You can create new screens, you can create new expenses, you can create new information right from the application. Now also you'll notice here they have this UI flows. UI flows are really collections of screens and modules and blocks that are reusable. The common module has things like the login screen and these header modules, the title modules. In most cases, you're going to be working in the main flow as I have here, but you can create your own flows. So for more complex applications, you can create multiple flows that will group your screens together to accomplish certain tasks. Now, next thing I want to do for our demo here is I'm going to create a new screen. You'll notice that when you go to create a screen, here's some examples of templates that we have. You can actually get more from our Forge, which is an open source repository of thousands of screens and components and templates that exist that you can take advantage of. I'm just going to create a blank dashboard here, and I'm going to select Include in Menu. So this will automatically add a link to the dashboard at the top of the menu, which you can see here at the top of the screen. Now there's another way to do this. You can many things in OutSystems can be done with drag and drop, so I can drag and drop that screen up there to put a link there as well. Obviously in this case it's redundant, so I'll just undo that, but just to show there are multiple ways to create menu items on a screen. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to select a card sectioned item or object or widget, and what it'll do is you'll notice the light blue highlights will show the structure of the screen. This is based on the UI templates. The templates can be customized, so you can create templates that work for you and whatever kind of design you'd like to create. In this case, I'm going to put a title in here, and in that card sectioned widget I can actually put different objects. I'm also going to put a container here because as I'm building out this screen, I want to put a couple of items below the credit card expense list. In this case, I can actually take that container and go to the style sheet, and I'm going to just put a little padding at the top of it. What I'd like to do here is just create a little space between the the top set of widgets and the container with the new widgets that I'll be working with in the bottom container. And notice as well, I have the ability to put sections in here. There's card sectioned items and various column items. In this case, I'm going to choose a columns 2 section, and then I will take another card sectioned and put one in each of those. So what we're going to do is basically reproduce what I did at the top, and we're going to create 3 different sections to display 3 different types of data. Again, all of these templates are editable and customizable. You can create them to match your company's needs in terms of colors and other capabilities. And all right, so now I'm going to go ahead and add titles for the different sections. I've got the top 5 companies, and I've got Apple 30 days. What I'm going to show at some point here in a few minutes is how you can use APIs within OutSystems as well. So now what I'm going to do is right-click on my screen in the Interface tab, and I'm going to fetch data from the database. You can also fetch data from other sources, and again, I'll show you that later when I use the API. What I can do is create an aggregate here. When I said fetch data, it created an aggregate, which again is a visual representation of a SQL query against your database. I dragged my expenses to that aggregate, and you can see it shows a preview here. I'm also going to add another source for cards, and what I'm going to do here is create a join. So I'm going to say I want to show expenses only with cards. I want to make sure that there's a card associated with an expense. And then I'm going to go ahead and set the expense card type, the expense card number equal to the card number. So we want to make sure that the data is related to the card that we're looking at currently. So I can go ahead and do that. You notice the publish button turns green again, meaning that we have successfully created the application in such a way that it doesn't have any errors. We can publish it. And now I'm going to do some different things here to create sorting and groupings. So I will group by month and month name. I will do a sum on the amount column here, and I'm going to just change the name from amount sum to just amount. I can also do that, set that to sort in descending order. I'm also going to add the name of the user so that that shows up in the aggregate. And then I'm going to also do an ascending order for the month column, because I want these to be sorted in terms of the months of the year, January through December. Finally, I will use that to, I will drag that into my expense table eventually to show the data here. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag a widget for a chart that I can display this data. So I can go up to the toolbox, and I'm just going to search for a chart. I'll get a column chart here and drop it. And now, of course, you notice that we see an error. Basically, we have to populate the data for the chart. You'll notice that it looks right at our aggregate, and it says, okay, we're going to do a get expenses list here. So it's smart enough to know in many cases what you're trying to accomplish, and it'll give you suggestions. It'll show you the name and the amount as the items that we're going to use. And we have a number of different things we can do here in terms of setting up the chart and how we want the chart to appear when we display it on the screen. And I'm going to create a tooltip here now as well, so that when you hover over this chart, you'll be able to see the name and the amount of the expenses. So you'll see who the expense belongs to and the amount of the expense. And I'm going to also create a stacked chart here as well. And there's a number of different things you can do. I'm going to go ahead and just hide the legend for this one, because we really don't need a legend in this scenario. Okay, now the next thing I want to do is I want to go to the dashboard again, and I want to get more data from the database. It's going to create another aggregate here. It's going to just call it aggregate 1 because it doesn't know exactly what I'm doing. But once I drop expenses down here, it'll actually call it expenses, get expenses 1 or get expenses 2. Again, I'm going to use some sorting and some summing, and so I'm going to do some of the different things that you would normally do in SQL by visually just setting these things to sort and to display in the way I'd like them to display. And again, I'm going to sort my amount in descending order because I want the topmost amounts to show up at the top, because this is going to be for my top 5 dashboard. Now, it called it Get Expenses 2, but I'm going to go ahead and change the name of this to Get Top 5 Companies. And then what I can do as well is change the maximum records to 5, so it only displays 5 records at a time. Okay, so now that I have my aggregate created, I can drag and drop that aggregate into the bottom section where I have the top 5 companies. And I'm going to drop it into that section. And similar to what I did on the front page or on the card detail page, I'm going to want to get rid of a column called image URL. I don't need to show that. I'm also going to get rid of the pagination here because we won't need pagination since we're only doing the top 5. I also wanted to put the company first rather than the amount, so I was able to just easily do that by clicking on that button at the top. Again, I can set the percentages. In this case, I'm going to just set the width of this to be 50%, so each of these columns will be 50%. I'll get rid of the pagination here. Again, I'm going to delete the object that does the pagination as well as the method that implements the pagination. And again, you get that automatically with OutSystems, which is great. It makes it very easy to create a screen with pagination that you can then scroll through as you're working on it. Now, similar to previously, I'm going to drag an image here. I'm going to resize that to 2 columns to make it smaller. And in this case, same as again on the detail screen, I'm going to go ahead and select an image for that. And I'm going to go ahead and use an external URL, which is again gotten from my my aggregate here. So I got the image URL. Now, in terms of the Apple 30 days, it may not seem to be intuitive as to why I put this on this dashboard, but really the point is for the demonstration to show how you can import and utilize REST APIs very easily in OutSystems. So when I click on the Logic tab, you'll notice I have SOAP and I have REST, I have SAP. We can integrate with other sources. I can also expose APIs for my application if I'd like. And then when I import them, I have a choice between a single method API or multiple method APIs. In this case, I'm just going to choose a single method API, and then you have this Postman-like sort of mini interface that allows you to set up your URL and your parameters for your API. I'm just going to copy this and paste it in here from IEX, which provides stock market data. You can actually parameterize this by putting items into brackets, and that'll allow you to parameterize your request. You can also put in headers, etc. for security. In this case, I have 2 parameters. One is the stock symbol and the other is the time duration. I'm going to just select Apple, and I'm going to select 1 month and hit the test button. And once I come back with a 200 OK, I can verify this and copy the response to the body. Now, this is interesting because what you'll see here is the response doesn't have anything, but once I have a successful response, I can copy it into there by clicking that button. And when I hit finish, what OutSystems will do was create an action to get the chart, and this is going to be normalized and act just like any other OutSystems action. You notice we created a structure to hold all the data that returns from that API call, and now you are going to be able to use this just like any other action within the OutSystems application. So in this case, I'm going to fetch data from another source rather than from our database, and this will create an action for me. And now we're in the we're creating a new action to get data. So I'm going to go ahead and call this Get Stock History, and what I can do then is just drag and drop the API that I just normalized by using the API import tool. And you can see that I have the ability to now put in parameters. So again, similarly, I can hard code this. Now, normally you would pass these as parameters, but for my demonstration, I'm just going to hard code Apple in 1 month just to make it easier. Again, you can see that we have the input variables there and we have the response. What I'm going to do next is go ahead and delete the default output that was set for the history, and I'm going to go to the configuration, and I'm going to copy that output parameter and just paste it. So that way I have the full response body structure right here in the call that I'm going to make to get stock history for my dashboard. And then finally, I need to take the output from that call and assign it to my output variable so that when this call is done through the application, that response will be returned to the caller. So now I've set this to the response variable, and you'll notice again the AI, there's a lot of artificial intelligence and what we call code mentors built into the application. In this case, the code mentor is going to be aware that I want to call the get chart and bring the response in there. So I assign that response to the output of the function call, and then once I publish it, everything will be able to work out, and you'll notice that once I complete this, we'll be able to get the API data right from the IEX website. And then finally, I'm going to drag a chart over here. I want to be able to display my data. So I can put my chart in here, and again, it's going to ask for the source information. You'll notice that it's going to have the output response from that function call. So getStockHistory.response is actually what I want to use to populate my table or my chart. And then I can set the title the data to the close price. I want to display the close price on here, and again, similar to previously, I can go ahead and change some of the parameters for my chart. I'm going to hide the legend in this case, and then I'm going to just set the label to 30 degrees. Okay, so now we've got a completed app, and I want to make sure that my dashboard is also set to be a default screen as well as anonymous, because as I said, we do have full role-based access control. However, in this demonstration, I'm just showing how easy it is, what you can build. At some point, you can build full role-based access control for your end users in your application. Now I'm going to go ahead and publish the application again, just to make sure that everything is working okay. Okay, so now I've got everything set up, everything is working. Now the final thing I want to show is how you can change the display. So I mentioned the different UI flows. I'm going to open the common flow, and I'm going to show you the login screen. I'd like to change this and make it a little bit more appealing. So I'm going to go ahead and change some of the items in here. So you can change the background colors, you can change the font. Maybe I want to increase the font a little bit. I'm going to move the theme editor over a bit here, and then I can select, say, Roboto. I made the font a little different size. I can also do a number of things in terms of the spacing between the items on the screen and the way that the text boxes look. I can just put an image on here very easily, as sort of this industrial, sort of urban image that I'm going to put on my login screen. And then I'm going to go over to my card detail screen and change some of the ways the rest of the screens look. So in this case, again, I've got the background. I'm going to change this background to black. I kind of like the black background. We've got the same font that we've done before. You'll notice that if I hit the circle, we can change the way the text boxes look with rounded corners, etc. In this case, I'm not going to use that image, but again, you can put an image behind your screens just as I did on the login screen. I'm going to go ahead and select Done here. And the next thing you can do is you can modify the theme. So when you go to the bottom of the theme in the interface tab here, you can see that there is an OutSystems UI, which is the base theme. And when you create a new application, that base theme is cloned to create a theme for your application. So I can go in and look at the OutSystems UI, the base theme. I can look at the theme that was cloned from that for my application, and then I can customize the theme using a style sheet. Now I have some basic CSS here. Just going to change some font colors and some background colors, things like that. There's about 25 lines or so here. I can copy this CSS, and I can just drop it in here by pasting it and click the Done button. And then once I'm done applying the CSS, I can go ahead and publish the application one more time. and then we can see the final result of our development process. Publishing usually takes a few seconds. Okay, now we're ready to go. I can open it up in my browser, and there you go. Now you see my card display. You can see the graphics. You can see the nice colors. If I hover over this, you'll see the tooltips that I created, the name of the user, as well as the amount of their expenses. These are clickable items, so if you wish to, you can put an action behind them so that clicks will take you to another screen or do something. You've got the top 5 companies. It looks like a lot of people take Ubers to lunch at McDonald's at this company. We can go through and take a look at the cards, and again, we have the ability to see the transitions that we created before and the information about the expenses for an application, for an individual user. And that's it. To get started quickly with OutSystems and build your applications using our full-stack visual development platform that provides single-click deployment and mobile applications made easy, visit us at outsystems.com/free edition, where you can download a personal edition that will allow you to get started quickly with learning how to build your applications with OutSystems. Thank you for your time today.